Pennsylvanians mailed in ballots or are heading to the polls in an unprecedented primary election. WGAL News 8's Barbara Barr talked with voters amid protests and the pandemic.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
The hallmarks of democracy could be seen and heard along Chestnut Street in Lancaster.
It doesn't get any more real than this.
I mean, it's election day, but I feel like this is what's going on in the world right now.
The freedom to peacefully protest social injustice.
We're showing that there is power to people coming out and speaking out.
And the right to vote in a primary pushed back more than a month due to the coronavirus pandemic.
There's a limitation to how much voicing our opinions go if we aren't voting and electing the right people.
Protesters we talk with say they are making their voices heard at the ballot box as well. The county elections office is just up the street.
Voting is the most important thing that you can do right now. The only way we're going to see real change.
Elections officials reported some issues with scanners at polling places requiring ballots to be dropped in a box. But many voters chose the first-time mail-in option.
And as you may have guessed, President Trump has won the Republican primary. Looking at the results, he wins with 95% of the Republican vote. And former Vice President and presumed Democratic nominee Joe Biden has won the Democratic primary handily. With 43% reporting, he is up with 77% of the vote.
Call this meeting of
the board met to talk about concerns and readiness for the November election. Chief among them, with only one day to count mail-in ballots under current law, how soon will the outcome be determined?
The public's going to want an answer as to who the winner is sooner rather than later. And the longer it goes, the more accusations will fly, the more suspicion will fly.
Lancaster County expects to receive about 120,000 applications for mail-in ballots, more than double the primary. It's purchased 3 high-speed scanners, a high-speed envelope opener, but would still need about 100 staff members to go through all the ballots in a day.
The county doesn't have a facility big enough to do that with social distancing.
For those voting in person, the county has installed plexiglass barriers at polling places. Voters can apply for mail-in ballots at votespa.com or on the county's election website.
President Trump continued his efforts to win Pennsylvania again as he spoke to supporters at Harrisburg International Airport. The president's speech came hours after he nominated federal appeals judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. Our team coverage starts tonight with Barbara Barr at the airport and Matt Pritchard in our Washington bureau. First, let's go to Barbara with what the president told his supporters.
With Air Force One in the background, the president stressed the importance of Pennsylvania, once again questioned mail-in balloting, and pushed for his nominee to the Supreme Court to be confirmed before the election. President Trump walked off Air Force One toward the stage at Harrisburg International Airport just a couple of hours after nominating Amy Coney Barrett for the Supreme Court.
Joe Biden has refused to provide his list because the names will be handpicked by socialists like Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
The president once again questioned the validity of mail-in ballots and referenced an investigation going on right here in Pennsylvania.
And then 2 days ago, they found 8 ballots in a waste paper basket. Unfortunately, they all had the name Trump written on them. We were going to vote for Trump. They were military ballots.
We're very confident that just as Pennsylvania voted for President Donald Trump in 2016, that this great state is going to vote for 4 more years.
Vice President Mike Pence expressed confidence of a repeat in our interview at Meadow Spring Farm near Lidditz. The president has questioned the integrity of mail-in balloting. Do you have the same concerns?
But when we see states around the country engaging in universal mail-in voting, where they literally send ballots to every name on the voter list, whether they still live at that residence or not, we think it creates a tremendous opportunity for voter fraud. We're going to stand strong for the principle of one person, one vote. It's at the heart of our democracy, and we're going to make every effort to protect the integrity of the vote all the way through this election.
The issues affecting you, revealed, explained, discussed. Now on WGAL 8 in Focus.
Hello, I'm Susan Shapiro. The 2020 election is getting closer. There are still a lot of questions about mail-in ballots and even whether polling places will be safe to vote. Tonight, we'll talk to election officials and a voter registration expert about some of those questions as we bring the election amid the pandemic in focus. What do you mean by clean?
Having each voter listed where they belong and at the correct address.
having deceased voters removed from the rolls in a timely manner.
We've heard that people, in fact, we've gotten some emails. People say they have received applications for someone who may be deceased. Can that happen?
Anybody can mail anyone anything. The fact that they are receiving applications from third parties is in no way, and for those I've personally spoken to last week when these started arriving in mailboxes, everyone I looked up, the voter has been canceled years ago for being deceased. We do a very good job. I have a part-time staff member that's their primary responsibility, to gather records from both the Pennsylvania Department of Health, letters of testamentary filed with the Register of Wills, and newspaper obituaries in order to cancel voters and have as accurate a voter roll as possible. But yes, a third party can certainly mail to anybody an application. The fact that they mail somebody an application does not mean that that person is registered to vote.
Would there be any way that someone could use that application to register for someone who is deceased?
Submitting a mail ballot application does not register you to vote, and submitting a voter registration application on behalf of another individual is something that would be detected and turned over to the county district attorney.
At a media briefing on election issues, the director of the State Department of Homeland Security, Marcus Brown, says local law enforcement, federal partners, even the National Guard and state police have been meeting for more than 2 years to plan out various scenarios that could interrupt Election Day, things like natural disasters, power outages, and voter intimidation. And on that last concern of voter intimidation, Director Brown says local law enforcement will be prepared to respond. So if you are at the polls and you feel intimidated or unsafe, he says that you should talk with the poll workers and then call police.
Law enforcement across the state is prepared to respond to our polling places to ensure that anyone showing up at any polling place feels safe in doing it.
Concerns about voter intimidation gained some more attention after the first presidential debate, when President Trump told his supporters to go in the polls and watch. But only poll watchers who are appointed by campaigns and political parties are allowed to go inside polling places, and they should not be near voters while they're voting. If you've already voted by mail, put your ballot in the mail or dropped it off at your county election office, or if you plan to vote by mail, the Supreme Court ruling does not affect the way that you'll be voting or any of the deadlines that we have been telling you about when it comes to voting. So for your vote to count, your mail-in ballot has to be postmarked by Election Day or dropped off at your county election office before the polls close on election night. If you put your ballot in the mail after your mail has been delivered on Election Day, or you drop it off after the polls close, it will not count. The court ruling simply allows for a few more days for your county to receive your ballot, since you, the voter, have no control over the speed of the mail. The deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot has also not changed. So October 27th, that is next Tuesday, that is the last day you can apply for a mail-in ballot. But as we have been recommending, you want to get that application in as soon as possible to give you and then your county election office as much time as possible to get and then process your vote.
The president held 3 events in Pennsylvania, including a rally at the Lancaster Airport in Lititz, Lancaster County. News 8's Barbara Barr was there and joins us again live.
And Janelle, Pennsylvania could be a tipping point in this election. The president barnstorming the state, stopping at different airports, including right here in Lititz, where a big crowd was waiting for him. He wasted no time in attacking Joe Biden's record and told voters there's a clear choice before them this election.
Because he's pro-religion, he's
pro-freedom, pro-capitalism,
pro-life.
A crowd of red-clad Trump supporters came out on a foggy day to hear the president after he landed at the Lancaster Airport.
Hello, Pennsylvania, 8 days from now.
Polls show the president trailing Joe Biden in Pennsylvania, lagging in support with seniors and in the suburbs. The president needs a strong turnout in the Susquehanna Valley. He wasted no time in attacking Biden's policies that he says have cost Pennsylvanians jobs.
The Pennsylvania Department of State says it is prepared to deal with any reports of voter intimidation in the days leading up to the general election. The Secretary of the Department says the state police, emergency management, and the Attorney General's office are just a few of the agencies prepared to handle any complaints.
Voter intimidation is illegal under state and federal law, and videotaping you, taking pictures of you without your consent is part of that
Any cases of suspected intimidation should be reported to poll workers. There have been reports out of Philadelphia of voters being videotaped by the Trump campaign as they deposited mail-in ballots in drop boxes. A Trump lawyer says the video shows voters dropping off multiple ballots. You're only allowed to drop off your own ballot.
Each county in the Susquehanna Valley has at least one place to drop off your ballot, and some have multiple places. So we'll walk you through how to find them and then what to do once you are there. First, go to votespa.com and look for the ballot return locations. Then you can look by county to see where your drop box is. Also check the hours. They're not available around the clock. And some counties are extending their hours, including weekends, as we get closer to the election, so you want to check there. Once you're ready to drop off your ballot, make sure that it's filled out and you use both envelopes, the secrecy envelope, then the outer envelope. Put them together even when you're dropping it off, and make sure that your outer envelope is signed and dated. Once that's complete and sealed, you can put this in your drop box, whatever it might look like in your county. Remember, you can only drop off your own ballot. You can't drop off anyone else's, not even your spouse's, and it must be dropped off, if you're hand delivering it, by 8 p.m. on election night, or it will not be counted. One more thing, you cannot drop off your mail-in ballot at your polling place. So make sure you do it early, find where you're going, and have a plan.
While visiting Pennsylvania on Monday, President Trump asserted once again that the presidential election winner should be declared on Election Day. The head of the Pennsylvania Department of State today fired back.
We have to fight the disinformation out there. I don't care who it's coming from.
More than 3 million mail-in and absentee ballots could be cast this year in Pennsylvania, and Kathy Bookvar maintains that counting those votes may take several days.
Certified results are not due in Pennsylvania until 20 days after Election Day. This is not a new thing. There's never been a circumstance where official results were ever announced on election night or anywhere near that.
Bookvar once again today urged anyone still holding on to a mail-in ballot to return it in person after the Trump campaign appealed the Supreme Court decision that would allow ballots with a proper postmark to be counted up to 3 days after Election Day.
We will continue to count. The counties are going to continue to count. And I will do everything in my power to make sure that the citizens of the Commonwealth and the nation are the ones who choose the next president of the United States and every other candidate on the ballot.
For the most part, if you have requested a mail-in ballot beforehand, you should have received it by now. But we know that not everyone is in that same boat. We've heard from many of you still waiting for your mail-in ballot. So what should you do if you don't get it in time? First thing is to call your county election office and let them know what's happening. It might be able to tell you an answer for your case. If you never get your ballot by Election Day and you still want to vote, your only option is to go to your polling place and vote in person. Now, since you have requested a mail-in ballot on the voter rolls at your polling place, it will note that, but you'll be able to vote by a provisional ballot. That essentially on a paper ballot looks exactly the same, except at the top it'll say provisional ballot. You'll be able to cast this vote as you normally would at the polls. But it will take a little bit longer to count because your county will have to wait and make sure it doesn't receive a mail-in ballot from you as well, because of course you cannot vote twice. So bottom line, if you do not get your mail-in ballot in time for the election, your only remedy is to go to your polling place and vote in person.
York County Commissioner Julie Wheeler has been working long hours getting ready for the election. She is date stamping absentee ballots while Commissioners Doug Hoke and Ron Smith are sorting them. Wheeler says voter safety is a top priority for the county.
We certainly are encouraging folks to wear masks. If someone shows up and they forgot their mask, we'll certainly have a few spares there.
The county has already moved personal protection equipment to the polls. That includes masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer. The county is projecting 75 to 80% voter turnout. It is estimated 150,000 voters will go to the polls. That is on top of nearly 100,000 mail-in and absentee ballots.
About 1,000 people waited in line to get into the rally in Reading, which is one of 4 campaign events across Pennsylvania in one day.
I mean, he's a true American patriot. He loves America, and Americans comes through.
Back to President Trump and everything he stands for.
In 2016, Trump won Pennsylvania by a little over 44,000 votes. So it's important, if not necessary, that he retain the voters he already has and capture voters that are still undecided.
You know what's looking good? Pennsylvania's looking good. Real good. If we win, you're going to see a stock market that's going to go like a rocket ship.
The president also continued his criticism of mail-in ballots.
You know when the cheating is going to take place? From the 3rd to whatever the date is that they gave.
This is WGAL News 8 at 11.
Tonight, we are hoping to know who will lead the nation for the next 4 years. Will challenger Joe Biden prove the pollsters right and emerge victorious? Or is President Trump staying in the White House?
WGAL has it all covered for you with up-to-the-minute results from across the country and here in Pennsylvania, where some voters across the Susquehanna Valley had to wait in long lines to vote. At one polling place in East Manchester Township, York County, people waited more than 4 hours. Good evening. I'm Ron Martin.
I'm Chanel Stelson. Welcome to News 8's Commitment 2020 election night coverage. We have a lot to get to tonight.
So let's get started with the race for the White House. With 44% reporting here in Pennsylvania, it is Donald Trump leading Joe Biden 55% to 42%.
And you've been watching NBC, but we take a look across the country as well. More than half the votes counted now. Here are the numbers so far. Donald Trump with 51% of the vote to Joe Biden's 48%. Our coverage of the presidential race continues later in this newscast with live updates from both campaigns. And we're going to have a county-by-county breakdown of your votes here in the Susquehanna Valley.
With so many people voting by mail this election, the complete results may not be known for days.
WGAL News 8's Danielle Woods joins us live from the Lancaster County Convention Center, where ballots are being counted.
Yeah, Freedom Hall nowhere near as packed as it was earlier in the day. There were about 150 volunteers and staff on site. Now just a small group remains, but these folks will be working through the night to scan those ballots.
70,000 mail-in ballots Lancaster County received by this past Saturday isn't a quick one.
It takes time to actually then have the software read the results, and then not only that, but if there are any discrepancies in some of the markings, somebody has to go through that.
Starting tomorrow morning, ballots received by Monday and today will be processed.
They have to be sorted out before they come back by precinct.
And as for mail-in ballots received by Friday, which the state Supreme Court says should be counted,
those ballots have to be segregated from the rest of the ballots because there is an appeal to the United States Supreme Court right now that's pending, and there's some question about whether the United States Supreme Court will rule on that.
Some are viewing that decision by the county as an attempt at voter suppression, but county officials say that's not the case.
We want a fair election, and we want every single citizen to have a chance to have their voice heard.
Commissioner Parsons told me that the guidance coming from the Department of State about how to deal with those mail-in ballots received after 8 p.m. tonight up until the end of the week, Friday, was unclear and conflicting. And tonight, Senate Republicans announced they are calling on Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar to step down immediately.
While the country continues to wait for all votes to be counted in the 2020 election, activist groups are rallying to make their voices heard that they want a fair election. In Harrisburg, We the People hosted a rally with 35 other statewide groups at the Capitol steps to tell those listening that no vote, whether cast in person, absentee, overseas, or provisional, should go uncounted. Cordell Affeld has voted in every presidential election over the past 30 years.
I understand that my vote makes a difference in what day-to-day life will be a decade from now, 2 decades from now.
Although election night has passed, the votes are still being counted, something President Trump's administration is currently challenging.
When there's a little tiny crack of division, our current administration widens it beyond anything I've ever experienced.
Richard Bloomingdale, president of the AFL-CIO, represented over 700 union members at the rally.
This is the time to count all the ballots, but it's also time to stand up and speak up if they try to steal the election from the people of Pennsylvania and the people of the United States of America.
We will oppose any effort, every effort, to at any point shut down the vote. We get to decide when the last vote is counted.
President Trump's campaign filed a lawsuit against Pennsylvania to stop the count of votes, citing a lack of transparency specifically in the area of Philadelphia. Governor Tom Wolf disputed those claims, stating Philadelphia has documented the counting of ballots since the pre-canvassing period.
I think it's being live streamed on their website, so I guess you can get it, anybody can get it anywhere in the world.
As far as the count, Boockvar says things are going smoothly and slightly ahead of schedule. But with hundreds of thousands of ballots not yet counted,
we will be continuing to work into the night all of us to support the counties to get this done.
Well, supporters of President Trump rallied on the Capitol steps this afternoon, calling for every legal vote to be counted in Pennsylvania. And WGAL News 8's Barbara Barr was there.
An activist and former staff member of the Virginia Republican Party organized this rally that drew Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania and Jim Jordan from Ohio.
We want the ballots and the votes that are counted to be legal, to be valid.
Congressman Perry says those without a postmark and received after the election should not be counted.
Stop the fraud! Votes that are not legal, that are not legitimate, that have been cast after the election or cast by someone that's not here legally.
Scott, do you have concern or any evidence of any problems with votes?
Well, how can we see it if we're not present?
The Commonwealth Court just ruled that poll watchers can be present after Philadelphia had been live streaming the process. Ohio Representative Jim Jordan argues the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overstepped its bounds in its election rulings.
The United States Constitution is very clear. The time, place, and manner of elections is supposed to be determined by the state legislature, the guys who work in this building, right? Not the state Supreme Court.
We are here to count every legal vote.
Many attending the rally from across Pennsylvania follow organizer Scott Pressler on social media. Dee Flaherty of York County doesn't trust mail-in voting. I think it is open for fraud. Another rally is scheduled for noon on Friday here at the state capitol. The lawsuit brought by Republican candidates and voters had also asked the judge to rule against Secretary of State Kathy Boockfar's guidance to county election leaders, advising voters that if they submitted a mail-in ballot that was flawed, they could come in and cure the problem. They argued that violated election law, but the judge denied that request and also refused to set aside those ballots. There were no numbers given on how many provisional ballots this order affects.
Supporters of President Trump are in Gettysburg today as state lawmakers hold a public hearing into the presidential election in Pennsylvania.
Well, President Trump spoke at that hearing virtually this afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Janelle Stelson.
And I'm Ron Martin. WGAL News 8's Barbara Barr is live at the Wyndham in Gettysburg with the latest in Gettysburg.
Yes, Ron, President Trump actually did call into this hearing that was put on by GOP, state Senate lawmakers, members of the policy committee. Some of his supporters gathered outside. Now, they have claimed voter fraud, but it hasn't been proven in the courts. Even though President Trump canceled his in-person visit due to a case of COVID-19 within his campaign, his supporters gathered outside the Wyndham in Gettysburg. They aren't convinced he didn't win the election despite the campaign failing to show evidence of election fraud in court.
This election was stolen from us via voter fraud.
I'm very happy to see this hearing that the legislature has said we want to have a finding of fact.
Republican lawmakers on the state Senate Policy Committee held the public hearing on election issues and potential irregularities. The president took part virtually from the White House.
This election was lost by the Democrats. They cheated. It was a fraudulent election. They flooded the market.
Judges have dismissed several lawsuits brought by the Trump campaign over the integrity of mail-in ballots, citing a lack of evidence. The president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and Republican poll watchers testified they were denied access to viewing the counting process in several counties.
In your state, Republicans were uniformly not allowed, kept out, put in chutes like they were cows.
You could not even see at all or witness anything if anything was any misdoing or anything going wrong.
This informational hearing comes a day after county election officials and the Secretary of State certified the results, declaring Joe Biden the winner of Pennsylvania by about 80,000 votes.
The most recent ruling came Saturday night from the state Supreme Court. They overturned a Commonwealth Court judge's order that paused the certification of some election results, not including the presidency. Supporters of the president wanted all mail-in ballots invalidated, claiming the law that gave all registered voters the ability to vote by mail is unconstitutional. Supreme Court judges say the lawsuit was filed months too late, considering the bill was signed into law last year. And on Friday, a federal appeals court in Philadelphia rejected the Trump campaign's plea to toss all of Pennsylvania's votes, both in person and by mail. They claimed counties' different policies of allowing people to correct mail-in ballots in a few cases should disqualify all votes. The Trump campaign is appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court.
President Trump vows to continue to fight the results, claiming with no evidence the election was fraudulent.
WGAL News 8's Matt Pritchard reports from Washington on what happens next.
It's a challenging year for these electors, facing added coronavirus measures and heightened security in some states, all in an effort to certify election results. Every 4 years, the same process plays out.
The electors of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania have cast 20 votes for the Honorable Joseph R. Biden.
I certify and confirm that all 7 electoral votes from the state of Oklahoma will be cast for Donald J. Trump.
Presidential electors from each state cast their vote, formally choosing the next president.
The vote is 6 Arkansas electors for Donald J. Trump.
Joseph R. Biden has received 16 votes for President of the United States.
Today's votes confirming Joe Biden's election victory. Normally, this is just a formality, but in 2020...
We have a president unwilling to concede and saying that the election was rigged, and so everyone's looking at that next stage of the process.
President Trump has fought election results for the last month and a half. Legal challenges have fallen short, including an effort to set aside 62 electoral votes in 4 states. The Supreme Court refused to hear that case last Friday.
Seems like he's running out of all avenues to challenge this on a legal basis.
Still, the commander-in-chief plans to keep up the fight, tweeting, "This election is under protest." Analysts say the president is almost out of time.
After the Electoral College votes, it makes what was pretty much a minuscule window that much more minuscule.
Now, there's one last step in the process. On January 6th, Congress will meet for a joint session where they'll count the electoral votes and then finalize election results.